Hey Jeff, I'd love to know if I'm able to sue if I'm injured playing sports.
Great question. Obviously, injuries are very, very common in sports. The tougher the sport, the more likely you're going to be injured. And really, the question comes down to whether the risk is inherent in the sport. And that's kind of what the case law says. And what that really means is, is the injury you suffered, is that something that is a typical risk of playing that sport? For example, playing basketball and you sprain your ankle, playing football and you twist your knee, or another player falls on top of you and injures your neck or your back. Um, those are things that those are the types of injuries that are just part of playing that particular sport. And you would not typically have any sort of an injury claim for those types of injuries. But if there's some sort of negligence that contributed to the incident or the injury, then you may very well have a claim. For example, um, did the little league coach allow the kids to go have batting practice with no helmets on and with no supervision? Or did a football coach leave a big tackling sled out on the field and then try to run drills and somebody's going to catch a ball and runs into the tackling sled? Well, clearly the sled should not be sitting out there in the field of play, and that could be considered the coach being negligent and creating a dangerous condition. Other types of claims, and I've had many, many claims like this, typically in football, but they can happen in any sport, is where a player is basically run to death or overworked to the point of exhaustion and suffers some sort of serious physical harm as a result of it, then you may very well have a claim. A lot of coaches, not so much anymore. Coaches are getting smarter and getting, ahead of the times. But back in the old days, it used to be considered a badge of toughness to undergo extremely difficult workouts out in the heat. Coaches would deprive players of water. They wouldn't give them appropriate breaks, and kids would suffer heat exhaustion, heat stroke, um, heart attacks, those sorts of things. And so if a coach puts you into a position that is unreasonable and that is not a typical risk that would be inherent in the sport, such as running 100 yard sprints with no breaks out in 100-degree weather and no water breaks, then there could very well be a claim. There's also, along those lines, it's also very important to know what the medical history of the player was when he was out there. And did the coach or the training staff or the medical staff have knowledge of this player's prior heart condition? Or the player might have sickle cell trait, which could make him more prone to suffering injury or death if he is overexerted without the appropriate supervision and without appropriate breaks. So the answer is that it depends. Whether or not you have a claim depends on the facts and the circumstances. And it's very important that you call a personal injury attorney who has experience in pursuing claims for sports injuries so that you can get an honest opinion to whether or not you have a good case.